If you're experiencing back pain when you squat or you deadlift, there can obviously be a few reasons for this, but I'm only going to talk about one specifically, and it's quite common. So the one issue that I am talking about is that people generally overextend. So they've got good intentions, they're trying to find that neutral spine alignment. So just to clarify things, if I'm in neutral, if I got this stick on my back, there should be 3 points of contact: the back of my head, the upper back, and my tailbone. I should just have just enough room just to get my fingers through. That's neutral. This is kind of what we want to build strength off in the weight room. Once we understand how to lock that alignment in, we're going to be able to build, some real strength, build proportion, build symmetry. Our stabilizer muscles are going to fire correctly. But people try to replicate that alignment, but they just overextend, meaning the ribs flare, so they're just kind of floating out in space. They've got this excessive curve in their low back, which just kind of really loads up that low back, and that really takes the grunt of the load, which leads to disc issues, and you're just really not making or getting the most out of your body. You're not really using your core properly. You're not going to be getting enough engagement out of your posterior chain when you're in that alignment. And there can be a couple of reasons why that happens. There's generally two types of people. There's a spectrum. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end, there's the guy who's like really super tight hip flexors, tight quads, like me. And he's kind of held in this anterior pelvic tilt. So he's kind of stuck in this extension due to restriction. Whereas the other person on the other end of the spectrum is, say, that small little female who's very, very hypermobile. Her joints are quite lax, and she is kind of living in extension due to lack of stability and strength, which is very different to just being tight. So same issue, but they're in that same position for two very different reasons. Either way, I use the same cue for both people. So the way I teach it, firstly, if you are that guy who's really tight, you obviously need to work on your mobility restrictions. And if you are that person on the hypermobile end of the spectrum, you obviously need to work on stability issues in the areas that need strengthening. So the way I teach it, the sternum and the belly button. So if you imagine, we want to think of this as a bridge. So this distance between my sternum and the belly button, we want to keep that distance the same. If we go into extension, that distance is going to lengthen and that bridge is going to break. So the cue I use after I explain that to whoever I'm dealing with is that don't break the bridge. So rib cage down, engage the abs, make sure that the pelvis is tucked under. So you want that tail tuck. So think about drawing the pelvic floor up. Use that transverse abdominis to really get the pelvis in the right position. Again, there are other people who may already be in that posterior pelvic tilt and may need to be cued to kind of slightly stick the bum out. Again, you need to know who you're dealing with or where you are in kind of that spectrum. But the same thing applies, don't break the bridge. Once we understand that alignment, rib cage down, we've got that engagement and we're actually using our core, we've got that anterior core control, the deadlift, the squat becomes something completely different. You should actually, when I squat, my core burns because I'm creating that bracing effect. I'm creating that tension. My ribs are down. Everything's engaged. I'm not just overextended, kind of floating in space. My low back's not just kind of just getting smashed. So don't break the bridge, and you will find that your low back won't hurt as much, and it will take repetition to understand this. This is not something that you're just going to magically be able to pull off. It's going to take some practice. If you are someone who's been doing deadlifts or squats like this for a long time, to teach you to kind of pull this in and hold it there in a dynamic fashion, extremely difficult. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be quite taxing on the nervous system. But I'd go back with just the barbell and just start squatting and deadlift with the barbell, or even a stick, even depending on where you are, and then just really focus on keeping everything engaged, and then slowly add weight. And over time, once you've got it down, then you can start loading it up and really build some serious strength.